I've been told that I cannot step off this red circle. So if I step off the red circle, you guys need to buzz really loudly at me. So I'm from New Haven, just south of here, many of you. Woo, woo! I love my neighborhood more than almost anything in the world. It's like a second family to me. I live on a commercial corridor in East Rock in the Upper State Street neighborhood. There are bicycle racks, there are trees, there is sidewalk seating. I walk to work every day. But it's not without its problems. The I-91 corridor is right next to our home. I'm raising a child there in range of serious noise and environmental pollution. Loud straight pipe motorcycles come to the bars in the evening. And on the other side of that highway underpass, people have been shot and murdered in the last few years. I grew up in New Haven. I will never give up on New Haven, but it needs to improve, like many cities. People are moving back into cities all over the world, and people are thinking about how we can take them over as humans again. Well, I will tell you that 6 years ago, I had a really hard time even getting the smallest things fixed in my neighborhood. But I was thinking about them a lot. I had just become a homeowner, and little things that never bothered me before started to bother me. So I was standing in my backyard one day with my dog, and my dog is barking at this piece of graffiti on my neighbor's building, and it had been there for like 3 months, and I'm thinking, I should probably do something about this. So I went and talked to my neighbor. My neighbor is a business owner and cares less about the neighborhood than I do. He also can't see the graffiti from his property and told me to kindly go away. So I started calling City Hall, and probably after the 4th voicemail that I left on the City of New Haven's voicemail system, I realized that this was not going to change anything. Now, this piece of graffiti was not Banksy or Shepard Fairey. It was just some scribbled name on a wall, and I really wanted it to go away. So I thought at one moment while on hold, you know, I bet my neighbors have reported very similar things, and there's been no resolution. And I'd really like to have a conversation with my neighbors about what they want to improve in their communities. So I started talking to my friends. Those friends are now co-founders in a company we created. And I said, you know, what if we created a web application where people could publicly document these kind of concerns? And we did just that. We sat down on a weekend. We said we were going to spend 4 hours, and we're going to try to build a web app that would help people do this. And at the end of 4 hours, we had this platform that allowed citizens to publicly document things like potholes or graffiti or streetlights that were out. And we had our friends play with it at Sunday dinner. And we realized pretty quickly that just from those early conversations that a lot of people were going to be, this was solving a big problem. Well, we spent the next 3 months trying to figure out how we could then get government to respond to these publicly documented issues. And we created something called watch areas. So watch areas are the ability to receive alerts based on the data that was being reported on the site. So you report a pothole in New Haven, based on the geofence, we'll send an email or an open data feed to the city government. The platform really works, and it's scaled very quickly. We have, in the last 5 years since we built it, 750,000 issues have been reported on the site, and nearly 70% of them have been fixed. You can imagine that's a pretty empowering experience for someone who probably comes to the website just because they're frustrated like I was, to say, you know what, this pothole has been here for 4 years and nothing has been done about it. And for the first time, they're speaking up about something like this. And for many people, the only time you speak up to your local government or make any kind of change in society at a local level is when you go to the polls. And unfortunately, not a lot of people do that. Well, what happens when you come out the next day after you've done the innocent act of reporting a pothole with your smartphone, 60 seconds, and the pothole's actually fixed? It's pretty empowering. And so most of these issues reported on the site are really service requests for government. They are these small things that we intended to see fixed. But what I want to talk to you about today is not those particular issues. There's been a number of other issues that have been reported on the site that are or the site has been used in a number of other ways that I think is really interesting. And the reason this happens, I believe, this is a mind-blowing theory, that potholes are the gateway drug to civic engagement. So from early on, we started seeing citizens who were also signing up to receive these alerts, stepping up and improving their communities. In a way, it was almost like a do-it-yourself neighborhood. So of course, there were people like myself who were going out and trying to paint graffiti over themselves or pick up litter in a park. We've seen people helping to go out and find other neighbors' lost pets. This was a dog that was reported on the site as locked up or chained up and abandoned a couple weeks ago. Quite remarkable what happens when you see citizens and government communicating together. Both an alderman and a district police officer are part of the conversation on the site about getting the animal shelter to come take the dog. And then 2 citizens actually who live nearby stepped up and said, we'll come and give the dog water while we're waiting. Pretty simple actions, but something that probably would have never happened before if these people had not been connected based on the fact that they were making a complaint to their government previously. We've seen neighbors come out and plant trees. This has been going on forever, right? But because of this local network connectivity enabled by the web, more of it is happening, and we're seeing it all over the world. And in some cases, we've seen citizens do things that are questionably legal, or in this case, illegal. They've said, you know what, I'm not going to wait for the crosswalk because it is unsafe for me and my family to cross the street. And in broad daylight, I'm going to go out and I'm going to paint my own crosswalk. These are things that have happened all over the world. This intersection actually is being redesigned in New Haven, partially because of reports from citizens and partially because people took it upon themselves. And the city's really taking it to a new level. They're actually removing a bunch of parking spaces and putting in sidewalk seating and making it much more safe than it would be just having this crosswalk. I'm going to give you guys 3 examples that I think are a bit more powerful than even this kind of do-it-yourself neighborhood stuff that I've seen in the last, this is all in the last year. One of them I was involved in, and 2 just users on the platform. So I believe that local connectivity really creates neighborliness exponentially. And I was flying back to New York last March, and I had that horrible experience on an airplane where if you've been on an airplane with televisions before, you see one television at a time start to flip, and they're all flipping to CNN. I will bet you that most of you have never watched CNN when something good is happening. And they were flipping to CNN because there had just been a bombing in Boston. And I got off the plane, and my co-founder called me, and he said, do you think we can help? And I said, I'm not really sure. We run a non-emergency platform. I'm not really sure what we can do here. The reason he was asking is because we're partnered with 55 municipalities in and around Boston area, including the city of Boston, and we have tens of thousands of users there. Well, by the morning, the users had answered my question, or my co-founder's question as to what we could do to help. One of them had come on and said, hey, let's post our homes as available for all these people who are trapped in Boston because there's this manhunt on and the airports are closed. And 1 home became 2, became 3. People were saying, I'm a nutty professor and have, a dog and a cat, but you can bring your dog and cat and your family because they're dog and cat friendly. And there's this, this kind of cross between Airbnb and Craigslist and awesome going on. And 2 hours later, 750 people had posted their homes in and around the Boston area. None of this would have happened if, just like those televisions on the airplane were flipping as people were watching the human next door do something to them, this is exactly what was happening here. During Nemo, we saw, Winter Storm Nemo, we saw something similar. Jamaica Plains, 30 plus elderly and disabled folks were shoveled out because they were asking for help, not just from their neighbors, but they were asking help from their government as they were plowed in. And other neighbors came out and helped out. One of the most striking examples was this woman in Branford, Connecticut, who posted that her due date was yesterday and she was concerned she was in labor. I was watching the site pretty closely at this point. People had been posting that they needed medication, and so we wanted to be really careful that people requesting emergency-related requests should know to call 911. So I actually went on and I said, please call 911. And she said, well, I'm not in labor. I just think I might be, and I want to make sure that my road is shoveled so that my husband can get me to the main arterial road where they can get me to the hospital. And a number of other neighbors started to come on and said, we'll help, we'll try to get the road shoveled. One of them happened to have the phone number for the fire chief, who was 2 blocks over. And he called the fire chief. He happened to be in this big truck. And 45 minutes later, this photo of this bucket loader came back, and her road was plowed. The next morning, she came back and she posted this. She delivered a baby at the hospital 4 hours later. Now, you can certainly deliver a child in your home, but if you're not prepared to do that, I just had a 9-month-old, it would have been a disaster. And I'm sure she was quite relieved, as well as her husband, that they were able to deliver this little baby because they were connected in a way they couldn't have been before. So potholes can be the gateway to helping to deliver a child. Potholes can be the gateway to becoming a bed and breakfast for out-of-town neighbors. I spoke about something which, in the beginning, I alluded to it. It's a problem all over the United States, these huge urban highways that divide neighborhoods, the one that sits next to my house. And one of the ongoing conversations on SeeClickFix, since we started it, was started by a Yale student, an undergrad, who became very attached to the neighborhood freshman year. And he saw these massive concrete embankments under 91. And this is really what made one neighborhood 2 neighborhoods, and it disconnects me from a lot of my neighbors. And so we were having conversations about what we could do to reconnect the neighborhoods, how we could disrupt these underpasses. And there were many ideas thrown out there. It was not till I saw the TED Prize winner, JR, a French photographer, who created a project that spread all over the world. And I'll show you how we implemented this project in New Haven at this underpass. And I'll start by saying that there is no way that we would have even had the courage to think about doing this project if we had not had the connectivity with the government, both local and state DOT. If you're in Connecticut, you probably know that the state DOT is one of the hardest agencies to reach. And they had been very responsive. They had helped us to get trees planted on their property. We had helped to do neighborhood cleanups by these properties. And there was a lot of trust that was built not only between the citizens and the government, but also back from the governments to the citizens. So I said to the DOT and the city, hey, what if we institute this Inside Out project on these underpasses? And that's exactly what we did. So on the course of 3 or 4 weekends, 6 or 7 photographers, local professional photographers, got out, and myself and other neighbors would grab strangers off the street and ask if we could photograph them. We did that, and then we printed out these huge 4-foot by 6-foot pieces of paper. These were, the production was funded by $12,000 that was raised on the crowdfunding site Kickstarter. And then we took these photos and we wheat pasted them. It's one of the oldest techniques. The Egyptians used this for putting up wallpaper, essentially, for putting up billboards. And we wheat pasted them onto hundreds of yards of concrete underpass. We called the project Inside Out, NHV. NHV is the hashtag for New Haven. And it's probably more prominent than the airport symbol, HVN, these days. And we named it, of course, after the international project. So in this process, hundreds of neighbors got to meet each other who never met each other before. I have to be one of the most, you're probably not surprised, social people in the neighborhood. I know a lot of people. I met 3x the number of people that I ever knew previously involved in this project. And we spent all summer wheat pasting these things. Part of the reason we got away with it is because we said it's impermanent. We said this is the first time that any artwork is going to go on any piece of highway infrastructure in Connecticut, especially done by citizens. And so I had to be really careful and say, look, it's going to degrade it's going to go away and we can do the next thing. And so it did. And the conversations that came out of it were really remarkable. People were angry that we were putting faces on the public's, on walls in the public space. Other people thought it was wonderful. But it got enough conversation that it made the New York Times. It made almost all of the local press. And it made a lot of local people who walk under that underpass celebrities to their own neighbors. And I think that was really important. It was really empowering. So I'll leave you with this. I do think you should ask what your government can do for you. Because if you don't ask what your government can do for you, you will never know what they cannot do without you. And I strongly encourage you to get out there, to help out in your neighborhood. We are, as humans, taking back the city. And it's going to be a beautiful place as long as all of us are committed to it. So thank you.